Hi guys. We today are going to, for science, be learning about sound. So I know in second grade there is a science unit that you probably did about sound. So we're going to probably review a little bit of that, but also add some maybe higher level things about sound now that you're fourth graders and are ready to learn about it. So before, I'm actually just going to have you watch. I found a brain pop. We're going to kind of go through a little bit of that and then come back to adding some more details about sound. So before we get to the brain pop, I just want to remind you that sound is actually like a kind of energy. So what it does is it travels in waves, and not like ocean waves, but they're waves that are invisible. We can't see them. It's traveling through the air, and it's traveling from one place where the sound happened to another place. And they're always created when something vibrates, and that's actually what makes the sound. So before we get into kind of how you produce sound, we're going to come to this brain pop, and we're going to watch a little bit of this. So make sure that you're in a good spot, that you're listening, that you're paying attention. I'm not going to have you take notes today. I just want you to be a really great listener. All right, let's listen.
Dear Tim and Moby, what is sound? From Nathaniel. Cut it out. Sound travels in waves, like the ones in the ocean. Well, not exactly the same. Ocean waves vibrate up and down at a right angle to the direction of the wave. That's called a transverse wave. Sound travels in something called a longitudinal wave. Here, we'll show you. A sound wave is a chain of vibrating molecules. Hitting these cymbals causes air molecules to vibrate. The vibration pushes nearby air molecules back and forth, making the local air pressure rise and fall. Let's see it in slow motion. As the cymbal pushes into the air molecules are packed tighter, creating a compression. When the cymbal pulls back in its vibration, it creates a low-pressure area called a rarefaction. Put them together and you get a cycle, and these cycles form a longitudinal wave. Humans can hear sounds from 20 to 20,000 cycles per second. This oscilloscope is designed to measure sound waves. How loud a sound is depends on the force of the compression, or the amplitude. A low amplitude produces a quiet sound, and high amplitude means loud noise. The pitch of a sound comes from the wave's frequency. High-frequency waves make high-pitched sounds. Low-frequency waves make low-pitched sounds. Usually, all sounds travel through the air at 344 meters per second. If it's warmer, the sound can travel faster. Colder air makes the sound slower. Sound can travel 1,524 meters per second underwater, and around 5,486 meters per second through steel. Sound can travel a whole lot further through denser mediums. Whales can communicate with each other by making sounds that travel thousands of miles. Sounds can be reflected or absorbed by things that they hit. An echo is a sound that bounces off hard, smooth surfaces back to your ears. Hello. 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 Soft surfaces like grass or pillows will absorb sound waves. You only know one chord, don't you?
Okay, so now we have a little bit of background. We heard some important words like pitch and frequency and echo and some different words. We're going to come back to kind of what we're going to focus on today. So the first thing is, how do we actually produce sound? So right here we see these two cymbals. So if you hit the cymbals together, the cymbals, because they hit together, will vibrate, which then causes the air and the molecules in the air to vibrate, and they vibrate all the way to your ears, and they get into your eardrums, and your eardrum vibrates, and then you hear the sound. So obviously if you're right next to the cymbals, when they bang together, the sound will be loud because the vibration didn't have to travel that far to get to your ear. But if you're far away from the cymbals, when they bang together, the sound won't be as loud because the vibrations had to travel a lot longer to get to your ear. So it says, first, before you can hear anything, a lot has to happen. So first, whatever the energy is has to be used to make something vibrate. So again, the banging the cymbals together is the energy you're using to make it vibrate. Then once the cymbals vibrate, all the air around the cymbals is then vibrating, and then that air bounces and it hits and it hits and it keeps traveling all through the air into your ear. Then your eardrums vibrate, and then you can hear the sound. So we're going to look at this about how the sound is produced by
Have you ever been close to something so loud that you could feel it making vibrations? Vibrations are caused when an object moves backwards and forwards very quickly. The vibrations make a sound. The wings of this dragonfly are vibrating so fast that they are a blur. Most vibrations can't be seen at all, but you can feel them with your finger. Bang on the drum. The rice grains show just how much the skin of the drum is vibrating, and that's what makes the sound.
Okay, now I want us to talk about kind of the different materials in sound. So this says that sound can travel through solids, through liquids, and through gases, which is really interesting. But the rate that it can actually travel is a little bit different. So the more strongly the particles that make up that substance are bound together, the faster the sound will travel. So sound travels really fast through a solid and really slow through a gas. Okay, so if it says the sound waves need particles of matter in order to travel from one place to another. So in the air, we have particles, but when we're out in space, there's not that same thing. So it's super interesting because in space, there is no sound because there's vibrations made by the object can't travel through there's no air, so there's nowhere for it to travel to get to our ears, okay? So the key takeaways here are that sound travels fastest through a solid and the slowest through a gas, and that in space, there is no sound because there's nowhere for those vibrations to travel to get to our ear. The next thing I want to focus on is the pitch and loudness. So the pitch and loudness are what kind of makes, and so you can tell a different sound apart from another sound. So again, every sound is made by vibrations, but the different qualities of it determine what it actually sounds like. So again, something that vibrates super fast will produce a higher pitch sound, and something that vibrates slower will produce a lower pitch sound. So we're going to watch and see this in music.
Different sounds make a piece of music change all the time. Sometimes they're loud. Sometimes they're quiet.
So in that video, you could hear lots of different types of sounds and different pitches and different loudnesses. And again, it all depends on the types of vibrations that those instruments make. So let's focus on pitch first. The pitch is, again, determined by how fast the speed of its vibration. So something that's vibrating super fast will be higher, and something going slow will be lower. So different music has different pitches. So if you are like playing a guitar and you can see that there's strings here, the thicker or the thinness or how tight or how loose a string is can affect its pitch. So if imagine that there's two of these strings and they're the same exact length, but one string's pulled really tight and the other string is loose. If you pluck those two, they're going to have a different pitch. The one that's really tight will have a higher pitch sound, and the one that's looser will have a lower pitch sound because it's going to not be as much vibrations. Then also how long it is and the thickness of the string can also affect it. So if two strings are pulled and they're both, let's say they're pulled the same tightness, but one's longer than the other, then the shorter string will make a higher pitch sound because it has faster vibrations, and the longer string will make a lower pitch sound. So here's an image and it says the thinner strings. Can you guys see how this one's really thin and this one's thicker? So on a guitar, it has different types of strings to make different types of sounds. So the thicker string will make lower, and the thinner will make higher pitch sounds. And that is kind of how instruments are made. So like an example, if any string instrument would have different like tightness, looseness, you can tighten the strings on your like violin. All of that changes the sound or the pitch. Now let's talk about how loud something is. So the loudness is called its like volume. So on your computer, you can turn up your volume or you can turn down your volume. The volume is determined by how strong the vibrations are creating that sound. So if it's a really strong vibration, then it's a louder sound. If it's a softer or a weaker vibration, then the sound won't be as loud. So there's a couple things that determine how loud something is. One is how far away you are from that thing making noise. So if you're really close to it, it's going to be louder. If you're further away, it's going to be not as loud. Another thing is how much force was used to make that sound. So if I right now have my table and I just tap it really lightly, that's not as loud. But if I bang on it, that's a lot louder. So again, hitting a drum or shaking a bell harder or softer changes how loud it is. And then again, now we can control a lot of the loudness by using like things like the volume on our computer or on our TV. All right, last thing is we're going to get kind of like to that echo idea and how sound absorbs or reflects different things. So again, it reflects off really hard, rigid surface, and it gets absorbed by soft things. So like they said, an echo is often bounced off like walls or in a cave, whereas if you are like into your pillow and you're talking, it gets absorbed by that and it gets muffled. So it says, have you ever heard of an echo? Think about the kinds of places where you might expect to hear an echo. Out on a rocky cliff, if you're yelling down the hallway, if you're in a tunnel, if you're under something, or if you're in caves, that would make an echo because if you look at this picture, when you say something, the vibrations would start bouncing off all of those solid surfaces. So then it says places that reflect the sound over and over instead of letting them spread out or be absorbed, those are the noisy sounds. So caves can make sound of even like a little bit of running water sound like a waterfall just because of the solidness of the walls. Then the opposite of that would be absorption. So what happens when you put your hands over your ears or wear earmuffs like this girl in the picture, or if you use earplugs, those are soft materials that you put on your ears or like squishy, and those make things sound quieter because they absorb the sound. So like a soundproof room is lined with like cork or foam or some sort of soft material that makes it so that the sound doesn't bounce off everywhere. So reflecting's when it like echoes, and then absorption's when it stops or like muffles the sound. All right, then that is kind of the end. What you're going to do now is go to, you guys are going to be making we're going to think about sound, and we're going to be making a STEM activity where you get to create a musical instrument. So you are going to create something that makes a sound. Obviously, it's not going to work like a real drummer or a real guitar or a real flute, but I want you to think about when you're making it, if you make a guitar, like maybe think about if you're making strings, making one of them tighter, one of them looser. If you're making a drum, can you make a couple different that make different sounds? How does the sound travel, and how does the pitch or the loudness of that sound change depending on how you're playing it? So go back to your to-do list and read the rest of the directions for what you're supposed to do. All right, bye guys.